All right, if you were absent for the first part of 6.5, we added a few things to the graphing calculator lab that we did yesterday. And also note that the slides that you're going to see here, there's a whole bunch of them, and you by no means need to copy all of them into your notebook. So I'll kind of tell you as we go through the lesson what we put into our notebook. We're going to start by graphing basic sine and cosine curves. So we wrote down our heading for lesson 6.5a. And then we added this information to our graphing calculator lab. So we wrote down all of this on our actual lab sheet from yesterday. So we talked about the fact that the domain of sine is all reals, because the curve goes to the left and to the right. The range, the lowest value is -1 and the highest value is 1. So there's our range. Yesterday we talked about period, and this is considered an odd function because it has origin symmetry. We also talked about the fact that sine, one period of it starts here at 0, and it does go uphill. In contrast to the cosine curve. So we took on our lab sheet, you guys were supposed to have graphed cosine. So we went to that section of our lab sheet and we wrote down these details here. And we noticed also that the only difference is cosine is an even function, so it has y-axis symmetry. Everything else is the same except that this curve starts up here at 0, 1. And it goes downward. So I told your classmates to make sure that they memorize the basics of the curves. Sine starts at 0, 0, goes up. Cosine starts at 0, 1, goes down. Of course, you can have cycles going backwards. So like I said, you're not just going to be graphing to the right. You can also graph these functions on the left side. That would indicate going around your unit circle backwards. Let's see, we kind of skipped over this slide. It just talks about domain and range. We talked about symmetry on this slide. And then we talked about graphing with key points. So we're always going to be making an XY table.
Bus 118, please. 118.
And with our XY table, we're going to divide one period into fourths. And that's going to give us 5 regions that we're going to be graphing, or 5 ordered pairs. And if you know these ordered pairs right here off your unit circle, then you're going to be just fine as we start graphing. So we went ahead and graphed this one here. And we did this one today in class. So what I had your classmates do, and I'll just kind of start you from the beginning here. The first thing we did was we actually analyzed the function. So we said the amplitude was 2 and the period was 2 pi. Because the period is 2 pi, you're going to start with 0 where the period starts, and 2 pi is where it ends. Then you're going to go halfway, which is pi. And then you're going to go halfway between 0 and pi, so pi over 2, and halfway between pi and 2 pi, which is 3 pi over 2. We're going to take those and plug them in for x. So every x value goes in here. So we're going to take and keep these 4 points in mind as we go around. So if I do the sine of 0, I am right here, and the sine of 0 is 0. So 2 times the sine of 0 is just going to be 2 times 0, which is 0. And then I'm going to plug in pi over 2. So I'm going from here to here. And the sign there is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2. And then I go to the next one, which is pi, so I'm over here now. and the sign there is 0, so I'm back to 0. And then I travel here, and the sign there is -1, so this becomes -2. And then I'm back where I started, and the sign there is 0. From here I graphed, and I sent home with you or with your parent some trig graph paper. So use that for your graphs if you have a lined notebook. You're going to have to mark off your scales for me. So pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and so on. You don't have to mark all of them, but give me a good idea of what you're counting by. Also mark off your y-axis, and then you just graph your points.
$114 and $123, $114, $123.
And it's a nice smooth rounded curve. Oops, that one's not very rounded. Let me keep going here. Easier said than done. Okay, so something like that. We stopped there with your notes because your classmates also took the second part of their test today. So this is all the further we got. Tomorrow we're going to skip to this one right here. That'll be number 2. And we did briefly talk about this slide here, which is what a reflection looks like. So you can have a look at that slide. But be ready to go with the next video here tomorrow.